GM, you beautiful bastards. I spent last week debating whether to make this film and how to even go about making it at all. Canadian YouTuber Dan Olson released a 2-hour marathon video essay entitled "Line Goes Up, The Problem with NFTs," which to date has racked up nearly 3.5 million views. But this is not a hot take. It's methodical, it's deeply researched, it's excellently delivered, and it's very astute. The knee-jerk reaction from many in this space has been to cry foul and race to point out exactly why Dan's wrong, the exceptions, everything he doesn't know, to defend by attacking. And I wish it was that easy. The truth is, if I were a skeptic, this is exactly the film I would have hoped to have made. Outside of NFTs and crypto, I suspect Dan and I are actually kindred spirits. His channel is about deconstructing the craft of visual narrative. He breaks down the art of narrative communication in pop culture, and he's really good at it. The uncomfortable truth is that in over 2 hours of watching, I found almost nothing that wasn't a reasonable take. Now, I'm probably one of the best qualified people in this space to make a long essay-type rebuttal video, painstakingly excavating the caveats to all the points that he raises. But that would suggest that his film should be discredited and rapidly dismissed, which would be a discredit to Dan himself. In fact, the opposite is true. His film holds up an uncomfortable mirror to this space and demands that we scrutinise every last wrinkle. One of the many critiques he levels at this community is a catastrophic inability to stomach any form of criticism. And he's right. There's zero point living in denial. Because if we can recognize the flaws, then there is a tiny little chance that we might actually be able to do something about them. And while I let you ponder on that, let's hear from our sponsors. Unstoppable Domains is the #1 provider of NFT domains. With your unique NFT domains such as camilla.crypto or camilla.nft, you can replace your long, complex wallet addresses, verify ownership of your NFTs, log into Web3 apps, and join tens of thousands of people using them as their Twitter usernames. Better yet, with Unstoppable Domains, you don't have to worry about gas or renewal fees, and you own them forever. Go to unstoppabledomains.com and get yourname.crypto, .x.nft, or a range of other endings for as low as $5. If you haven't watched Dan's film, I'd highly recommend that you do. But first, make sure you switch your outrage triggers off. But if you haven't, then the gist is actually pretty simple. This space is populated by suckers and scammers. It's built on unsustainable hype. It replicates all the worst power structures of the world it claims to replace with none of the safeguards, and its only purpose is to further enrich those who are in fact already rich. Now, when every single supposed technical innovation is actually complete bollocks and doesn't work. The film is entitled "The Problem with NFTs," but really it should be called "The Problem with Crypto." NFTs are just the latest overhyped common sense scrambler attracting the unsophisticated into the scammers' nets. Dan's scorn for the humans in this space is a repeated theme throughout the film.
A big population of people have willingly self-identified that they have substantial disposable income, poor judgment, low social literacy, a high tolerance for nonsensical risk, and are highly persuadable. Bored Ape members are particularly susceptible targets of fraud owing to their specific combination of greed and low social literacy.
All of this brings us into the realm of sociology and digital ethnography. Discord chats, tweets, social media ramblings are all brought to bear as examples of the buffoonishness of crypto morons. But the thing is, I'd argue this is more of a symptom of social media culture in the 21st century than anything specific to crypto. But this bleeds into everything throughout the film. The way we mythologize things, the shilling, the clout posturing.
There is a tremendous disconnect between what NFT advocates say they do and what they actually do. But, and this is very important, both the claimed functionality and the actual functionality are both bad. It's all broken, none of it works well, so the idea of it becoming the norm is terrible. But the prospect of what the world would look like if all the mythologizing and overpromising came true also super sucks.
Dan's film promises to reveal the problem with NFTs, but when the dust settles here, all he's really done is outline the problem of modern society in the digital age. His beef is with the hype and the stupidity around NFTs, which is the fertile ground for scammers to thrive. The real problem with NFTs is almost nobody understands what they actually are. So let me make it simple. An NFT is a method of representing specific states of data so that they can be added to a blockchain. It's basically a file format. Now, getting mad at NFTs is like getting mad at PDFs because someone used them to make a copy of Mein Kampf. So the problem is really that a piece of, yes, admittedly flawed technology has been conflated with the actions of human beings who are desperate to make money quickly. And why they're desperate to make money quickly, well, that's a whole bunch of other things that we're well aware of in the world at large. Now, while the research is really, really good here, Dan also falls into the classic I don't like equals it's shit paradigm of cultural criticism.
These were notable for, again, commanding utterly irrational prices, seemingly completely decoupled from any legitimate or legal transaction, and being generally extremely fugly. It's not just that I oppose NFTs because the foremost of them are aesthetically vacuous representations of the dead inner lives of the tech and finance bros behind them.
So here's something. Growing up in England, like I did, the prevailing thinking was that Northern Americans do not appreciate or understand irony. And that's reductive, granted. But Bored Apes' vacuousness is in fact deliberate. And yes, it's ironic. GM, WGMI, etc. The origins of all of that is deeply ironic. It's self-deprecating, it's tinged with black humor. And if you were there in the early days of NFTs, you were acutely aware that this was obviously nonsense. There's a greater irony in Bored Apes rising in perceived value to the extent that they've now become the very thing that they were positioned to be a protest to. Well, that's a pattern we've seen repeated over and over throughout history. There's no doubt that NFT bros became unbelievably obnoxious last year, and the overwhelming weight of violent tweets against them bears uncomfortable witness. And it's also true that GM and WGMI have been appropriated by people who don't understand the irony and don't use it ironically, and that's also cringeworthy. But we can allow them that. Dan also touches on the environmental impact concern around blockchain usage, an argument that was used to beat NFTs last year, and it is a legitimate concern. But if we're going to go there, should we consider the ethical implications of posting a 140-minute video with little to no visual storytelling that could just as easily be consumed in an audio-only format on a streaming platform? Well, that just seems petty. You know, I probably would have just let this go. I would have applauded Dan for a ferocious piece of work and taken the reality check squarely on the chin. But then we find this.
This heady, high-minded philosophy is outlined in great detail in the journalistic abortion, The Infinite Machine.
Abortion. Really? Comparing a book written by a woman to the intentional death of an unborn infant. Seems a little unnecessary, doesn't it? He goes on to call Camilla a
failed journalist turned crypto shill guilty of journalistic malpractice.
Her crime, apparently not being critical or balanced enough, which, ironically enough, is an accusation to make about Dan's film itself. And there's that word irony once again. So there is a conversation to be had here, a genuine, real conversation, but it deserves better than to be framed in video volleys, me sending a video to Dan, him sending one back, served asynchronously between sharply scripted co-combatants. So I'm going to put this out there. Will you, Dan, come talk about it on a live stream, a podcast, or wherever? We're a small channel, but Camilla was singled out in the film, so I think we've earned the right to reply. Dan's film has 3 million views, and we'd struggle to even come close to that, but with your help, you the viewer, sharing this around, getting it seen, maybe we can persuade Dan to come and have that conversation. So if you'd like to see that happen, then share the link around. Let's see what happens. It's in your hands. Ultimately, the strongest argument in favor of this space is that the evolution of technology has tended to be extremely Darwinian, the survival of the fittest. If tech isn't meant to be, it dies. We see this replicated so many times in DeFi. If a protocol cannot sustain itself, it simply collapses and goes away. If Bitcoin really were a giant scam, it should have died already, but it hasn't. History has actually left us very few examples of scams lasting more than a few years. They generally blow up really fast and then go away because the existential risk to the scammer of sticking around for too long is so very, very great. So if Bitcoin really is a scam, then why hasn't it already gone to zero? Either the cartel is the greatest cartel in history, or might there just be something here? However obfuscated by idiots. And maybe that's the biggest takeout here. So much of this looks ridiculous, it looks idiotic, it makes no sense, it's frustrating, and yet it continues to be. We can either fight that, or we can try and do something to make it better. I talked about Dan's film holding up a mirror, and it really does, but crypto is also holding up a mirror to every bad impulse of mankind that seems to repeat ad nauseum. If you watch the interview with Andre Cronje, this came up repeatedly. Despite our best efforts to code our way out of trouble, trouble continues to find us. The uncomfortable truth about all of this is that the real problem of NFTs, in fact of everything, is us. And there may be no solution to that.